Hey everyone, I'm Rachel,
And I'm Jen, and welcome to Devilish Bookworms, the podcast.
where we read and review books and release episodes every Tuesday.
This week we have A Mid-Flight Vampire's Tale by Linda Ling.
Yay!
Yay! Two elder vampires from opposing sides have no other option but to join forces against a greater evil. Though they despise each other, they must set aside their differences to stop the devastating peril to come. Henry and Cheng have time to kill before the battle, and being stuck on a plane together may start a battle before the real one begins.
Dun dun dun.
So, Rachel, what did you think about this book?
You know what I liked about this book right off the bat? I love the fact that there are two different kinds of vampire. So, like we all know the Dracula version where you bit and then you get turned into a vampire. And then every person who writes vampires writes them differently. The biggest consensus being that you have to trade blood, right? So like I bite you and then you bite me, and then that's how you become a vampire. Like I bite you, drink your blood, and then make you drink my blood, and then now you're a vampire. But I also love the idea of like an inherited werewolf or an inherited vampire. Like there's so many different kinds of people in the world. Like there's so many different kinds of vampires, and Linda included both of them, and I thought that was really cool. And I thought it was a cool dynamic that they would hate each other.
And to actually kind of go off of that, I love the fact that with the two different vampires, one could walk in the daylight without a daylight ring, like most of the TV shows, books, and all that. Um, but also the fact that she made it seem that making a vampire was actually difficult. So if one did choose to actually make a vampire, it was like 1 out of 10 people would actually transform because most of the time it would actually reject the vampire's blood, which is
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was really cool. Like it didn't just be like, oh yeah, there was millions of vampires running around. No, like she put a cap on it to make their existence real enough that they're there, but not overly abundant where they're taking over everything, which
Yeah, not just everyone.
yeah, exactly. I thought that was a nice change from the norm of vampire realms.
Yeah, it was really cool. You know what else I thought was really cool that she includes in the book is vampire lore. Because there's such a, we as people always are like, how did we get here? What is the purpose? Blah blah blah. And
Mhm.
and I love vampire lore. Like they don't even know what happened or what was real or what really, transpired.
Yeah. And with the fact that, vampires go back so far, of course, all that knowledge is lost throughout the years and through different vampires and all that, and elder vampires dying and stuff. So I don't know. I fucking love that shit. I absolutely love it.
Yeah. So the two different kinds of vampires that there are the true blood vampires, um, and those are the ones that are the inherited, right? Like those, you give birth to a next vampire, and the way that works is they're born, they grow, and then when they hit puberty, it's when they get stronger and when they really crave blood and all of that stuff. And the true bloods are the ones that can walk in the daytime and eat real food and all of that. And the hybrids are made by other vampires, and they're what we think of when we think of traditional like vampires. They, not being able to eat any food, can't go out in the daytime, and all of that stuff. Um, And I think it's funny, and it kind of adds to it how like one vampire, like if two vampires are sitting there together and like one is just watching the other person eat pizza, like what sublime torture. Like you're just sitting there like, oh, man, I hate you, I hate you.
Especially because they started out as human and remembered the taste, but now they can't have it. So it's just like an extra like dig.
Yeah, like fine, jerk. So Linda, the author, actually lives in Singapore. And one thing about her characters is that she does include a lot of Asian, East Asian characters. And I loved reading it. I loved reading about it. And there was always, they did make a point like there's this kid named Julian, and he goes, there's something about this. There's something about this guy, and he's like, yeah, I'm Asian. It was like he goes, you're just like her, and he's like, yeah, I'm Asian. It's like what a little cutie pie.
The fact that she brought so much culture into it definitely like hit home for me because I love when authors do that. Especially the fact that she was bringing in traditional phrases
Mm-hmm.
and there was different clothing that she would actually reference, or even the fact of a traditional word for younger sister was in there. And I love that because it not only was it like a sweet little touch to it, but it just made it more personable. Like I I felt like I was getting to know Linda at the same time because I'm sure like some of this was what she grew up with. And let me tell you, I want one of those traditional Chinese outfits. My grandmother had one when she went to China and she looks so pretty. I couldn't believe it. And
Oh.
I don't know, it gave me memories to look back at while reading it.
What's funny is when I was younger, a lot younger, my grandparents from my California side of the family, they went to, that was the one thing, one was from Kansas, the other one was from Oklahoma, and their one thing that they always wanted to do together is they wanted to go see the Great Wall of China. They got this whole group together, and then they all went to China, and they got, like they bought us outfits. They had, they also went to the Great Wall, and I was so excited that they got to do that together because it was like one of the best memories that they had together.
That's awesome. And see, for my grandmother's trip, she actually bought me a Chinese teacup set.
Oh.
It's 14 karat gold and everything. Like this set is beautiful. It has never been outside of the box for more than 30 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just like it's the most beautiful set I've ever seen. Like I wish it came with a teapot, but it didn't. It was just the cups and saucers. But oh, I loved
Yeah.
getting that. That made my freaking my day when I she handed me that. I was so happy.
Yeah. She also did she added a lot of, as you said, references. Um, she talked about the Chinese vampire. Do not do not fault me too much. I think that it's pronounced Jianxi. Jianxi, I think. Jianxi. Um, but it was really cool to learn about that because I I mean, I've only ever really read about Western kind of vampire and European vampires, but to read about the Chinese, the hopping vampire, was really cool. So with the hopping vampire, the reason why they hop, that I was able to find is because the corpses are so stiff that they can't move like their arms and legs, like they can't bend their
Appendages.
limbs. Yeah, so they have to hop.
Could you imagine just walking down the
Hopping?
street? No, could you imagine walking down the street and just seeing something coming at you hopping and it being a hopping vampire?
Absolutely not.
So, one thing that I love that she did is she actually made a character that had the ability to sense a vampire, which is not really
Mm.
typical. Like, there's not really someone that just like is all of a sudden, oh my God, there's something wrong here. There's something unnatural. So the fact that she had a character that could actually sense the vampire as it's coming into her vicinity, it just that really got me thinking like they say it's a rarity for it, but how many people went with the signs of this and didn't know? Like that would be something absolutely insane if it was actually true.
Well, yeah, I mean, she's prescribed Xanax because of the fact that they think she's having panic attacks.
Yeah, they think she's literally certifiably insane. And I love the fact that she actually brought it to like something that we can all understand, like it being a panic attack, like all of a sudden you're seeing red, your throat's closing up, you can't breathe, you're just like you're freaking out. So the fact that she made it that as the sign that these vampires are around, I thought was a little bit better because it makes you think like, okay, how many people do you know that have panic attacks or anxiety or something along that line? How many of those people could have been a censor? You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's just, I love that. I absolutely love that.
And I love that it manifests in a panic attack because, of course, it would. Like
Yeah,
they're predators, they're deadly, they're out, they're predators, and you have your fight, flight, freeze, whatever charge. Um, of course it would be panic, and I don't think I've ever read or seen a show or a movie or you know heard stories of someone who has that kind of reaction like that. I think it's so cool.
yeah. And I love how she put an evolution spin on it because she said that because the vampires were evolving, that some people did as well. And they grew this extra ability to sense the vampires. And I was like, okay, that completely makes sense. Like she actually made it logically make sense on why it would happen. So it's not just like, oh, you're just special, so you get it. No, like there was an evolutionary process behind why it happened. And I love that. And I
Mm-hmm.
really need to stop saying I love that. But I do. It was actually, it's really great when you can actually parallel it to something that everybody can understand and also make it make sense in reality. And that I think is kind of
Mm-hmm.
important with when you're dealing with a supernatural book because of the fact you want it to kind of be more realistic because the more realistic that you can make the supernatural, the more you're going to like get sucked into it.
Yeah, because it adds to that whole like, wait, hold on, what if? It's like,
Absolutely.
yes, you can totally dive into the fantasy realm of it, and that's completely a choice. You know what I mean? Like, there's plenty of beautiful fantasy books, but when you take those things that people think are myths or people are, you know, it's like going and talking about fairies in Ireland, and they're like, no, here's factual, like, this is how it happens, or this is how it could happen or would happen. It kind of brings it to life a little bit more.
Yeah. Makes you kind of question reality a little bit more. And I'm sorry, I already question
Mm-hmm.
reality because do we really honestly know everything about this world? Do we know the whole truth? The answer is no. Are we ever going to know the whole truth of what's real and the whole existence of reality? No, we're never going to know it, all of it. And I love it.
No, we're still finding animals.
Yeah. That leaves us to fill in the gaps that are there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, making my heart so happy right now.
You are?
this this discussion because,
Oh, good.
well, when it comes to supernatural and like reality, it's how far is the leap? Because if I'm not going to get into all the scientific reality of it, but I mean, would it be possible for a vampire to exist? Why not? There's cannibals. I mean, there's so many different. I know it's a far fetch, but what if someone just became a vampire because they were like cannibalistic and then they started liking the taste of blood and then they had a kid and that kid like just the taste of blood but not the meat. It's weird, but it could happen.
This is a fantastic conversation. And I just need to point it out because of the fact that you're an atheist.
I know.
Not to put you on blast, but you're like, vampires could totally be a thing because why not? And then you're like, something else? Absolutely not.
Okay, listen. Vampires, quote unquote, start as humans. Okay. So if there's an evolutionary change to change a human into a
Not
vampire, I
according
can,
to Linda Ling.
well, there is a little bit, whatever. But even still, like, there's that change, that process. There's certain things that I can't believe in because it just doesn't make sense. It can't compute in my brain, and I can't tell you why, and I don't.
Explain. Explain.
Well, we are not going to explain on this podcast. But it's just one of those things. Like, I can see A to B on humans to vampires, but I can't
Mhm.
see A to B on God and humans. That's just
Yeah.
me. Anyways, back to the book.
Maybe as vampires.
maybe maybe we de-evolved in from vampires to humans. Wouldn't that be something?
Have you been on the internet? We're still vampires.
Yeah, we are pretty soul sucking. Whatever, we suck the life out of each other. It happens. This book is a little back and forth when we
A
start.
little.
Okay, it's a lot of back and forth, because we not only go from seeing Chen, who is our main character, our main vampire character, uh, she we see her perspective, and then we see the perspective of a character named Sarah. We see Julian. We see
And then we
Henry.
see every other character's point of view that is in existence in this entire universe.
We do see a lot of perspectives. Uh, the main perspectives we really see in the first part of the book are through Cheng, Julian, and Sarah. And when they get together, it's kind of like a very comical situation because Cheng is very like strategic. She does her thing, gets out, and that's it. Like she's very bop 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 bop. While Julian is a child. He's 10 years old or 11 years old. I can't remember which. Um,
He's 10.
okay, so I just remember there was a point where he said, I'm 11 or almost 11. And
Yeah. It was, yeah.
but so he's a 10-year-old boy. He hasn't hit puberty yet, so he hasn't become a vampire yet. Uh so that's kind of docile in him. And Sarah is like the bubbly, fun loving woman that is put in charge of Julian.
You know what's funny is that Julian was my favorite character.
Was he really?
Yep.
Was it because he was kind of spicy?
Yep.
Ah,
Because I actually like, so I kind of thought at first I was like, this doesn't seem like it would be a kid saying these things, right? So I was reading it and I was like, I mean, I guess a kid might say this, but I don't think a kid would say this. And then I remembered watching um the show AJ and the Queen with RuPaul,
Okay.
and that the little kid that played AJ was phenomenal. Phenomenal. And so smart and so witty and so like bop bop bop, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I think even some of my favorite quotes came from Julian. So there was a part where Julian first met Cheng and said, what are you who what are you supposed to be anyway? A goth Wednesday Adams?"
Oh, I love that she made
So
that
funny.
reference.
So
But
funny.
yeah, I actually have that part highlighted because I was like, oh my God, that is hilarious. Okay. So one thing I have to point out, I don't know if you noticed it, but I kind of loved that she did this. But the way she broke up chapters, there was the person that she was in the perspective of, and then
Mm,
there was Chinese lettering, and that was the plane scenes. And by the way, the letters, I looked them up, or the symbols, the Chinese symbols, they actually said plane, and I was like, oh, that's so cool, because I needed
I'm
to
gonna
know.
be 1,000% honest with you. I did not make that correlation.
Yeah, it literally means plane. I
No, no,
was
no. I didn't even realize that was I okay. I was so confused because every one of the plane scenes, I believe, was from Cheng's point of view, but
yes,
then other parts it would say Cheng.
yes.
So I was sitting there like, why is it sometimes it's in, one lettering and then the other times it's in a different.
Okay, so yeah, so the plane was fully from her perspective, but she was talking to Henry, which is the other elder vampire. But
Mhm,
then the other chapters, which those chapters were actually numbered with the names, but the plane chapters aren't actually numbered. They're just inside of the existing chapter that you're on. Um,
mhm.
so kind of like a subchapter. But either way, so yeah, you're getting everybody's different perspective, but
All
Cheng's
500 of them.
Cheng's perspective actually comes outside of the plane. So back to like what she actually has already lived through, which again, love that. And I'm gonna say a thing. I love the fact that she actually went through different portions of Chang's life. Um, she would tell what happened with Julian, which happened 2 years ago from where she is in the plane now. And then she went and described what happened right before the plane and the events that led up to it. And then she actually goes back and tells her story from her birth. And I absolutely appreciated the fact that she went back and actually told us Chang's story, like from the beginning, because you don't know anything about how she became a vampire, why she hated True Blood so much, or a hybrids, why she just kind of stayed on her own and just stayed away from all of the other vampires unless she needed something. So kudos. Kudos to that.
So I don't mind jumping around in time frames. I don't. I actually really like it as a plot device. I just kind of wish there were a couple of things that I just kind of I there was so much hopping around in it for me that I kind of like it would pull me out and then I would have to, refocus and be like, okay, where am I at now? What are we doing? Um, but I like the fact that you and I have different opinions of that. I really like it when we disagree.
Mhm.
Because I like knowing that something is just not for me. You know what I mean?
Right. And
Um,
And see, me, I just liked getting the whole entire story. And let me, don't get me wrong, you do get the whole entire story, and it is out of order and it is sometimes a little wacky. But I appreciate the fact that we got to understand where she was coming from, her mindset,
Mhm.
and all that.
I think the best example for me, there's one particular bit that explains it perfectly to me. So we have some things going on. There's this big, huge, epic scene, and then we are with Cheng in a room, and she finds a blade. And then all of a sudden she gets real like sentimental about this blade. And the story behind it was the fact that she had two blades in the past. One was lost, someone finds it, and then like they give it back to her. And that's why she's so sentimental, because she had kept the one the whole time. And then the other one was lost, and now she finally has the pair. And she's like, oh my God, it's, it's my other knife, whatever. And I like that. But if there had been like it's literally like no knife, she finds a knife, we're told that she's emotional about the knife, and then we get the explanation on the knives. But to me, it would have been cool if there was like some foreshadowing, like if we see her in a specific battle, or like if we see, her using the knife, and then she's like, oh, I wish I had my other, I wish I had, like the pair, like the matching one. And then we would be like, oh, okay, so there is a matching one. And then, maybe she like gets lost in that memory, and then she goes about her day, and then later on we see the knife and we're like, oof, that's the knife from before. Whereas the way it's written now, it's just kind of like, oh, okay, so she's got a knife, she had two, she's got one, now she's got the other one, and she's sad about it. Cool. i feel like we're I feel like we're told the significance in the way that it's written, but for me it would have been cool, it would have hit a little bit harder, if it had just been rearranged a little bit differently.
Yeah, because you actually don't get the rest of the information until way later.
If you got the breadcrumbs, it would hit harder. So the only other thing that I kind of that kind of felt weird reading for me was, there were some parts that seemed like they were kind of like pulled, like dragged out a little, and then other parts that seemed like not rushed in writing, but rushed in pacing, if that makes sense. So like there was one part where there's this huge pivotal scene, and she's saying, oh, I need to get to this character, I hope this character's okay. And then it cuts off there, and then goes to, she has the character, and then she's running away, and I can't go too much into detail just because of the fact that like spoilers, but it felt in that instance where it was like, that would have been one instance where I would have appreciated, the connection, like seeing her, get to the room, and then if there was a struggle that was to be had, how did the struggle happen? And then, you know, there if you read the book, there are so many reasons why I would have liked to have had that specific scene in there. Um, because I can't too much into detail, but
Yeah,
suffice it to say, like there were some parts that I felt didn't necessarily need to be as long, and then other parts that I wish had been there.
I can actually agree with you on that. Like you said, there were parts that were like really drawn out. Although I did like getting as much information, there was some parts that could have definitely been left out or at
Mm-hmm.
least like reduced a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I don't find that it took anything away from it, but I think it would have just added a little bit more if there was a little bit less in some areas.
Or like if there wasn't repeating.
Right, because as the saying goes, sometimes less is more. And in some
Mm-hmm.
circumstances, less would have been more. Unlike, like I said, I love the fact that we got Chang's background, like from birth to present, because I think that was actually severely important for her character.
Hmm.
I don't know, did we really need a couple of scenes with Tony or Tim or
Yes,
Felicia?
yes,
It's
we
like
did. Yes, we did. We needed all of the scenes with Tony. How dare you?
Tony was a sweetheart, but come on.
That is one thing that I will not concede. I will not give up any scenes with Tony. There was a part, it was really funny because at the beginning that I wanted to, because if you guys follow us on threads, with Nenia Campbell books, I always like when I hit the pivotal scene or when I hit a certain bit, I always not tweet out. I always like post a thread and I'll be like, Nenia, what is this? Like, what's going on? And there was a part with Tony when it's in the he was in the car and he said, I panicked. I took you against your will. I'm sorry about this. And it was so sweet and then so like not sweet. I I almost posted a thread like, Miss Linda, we need to talk about this Tony man for a second.
Well, I think that's actually kind of what his allure was the fact that he was like a sour patch. First he's a little sour and then he's sweet. Sorry, I had to. But no, like
Yeah.
he had his moments where he was such a dick, but he redeemed himself.
I won't give up a single scene. In fact, I want more scenes of Tony and Sarah in the room
You know something?
playing
Having a
chess.
I'm just saying having a little novella come out with just Sarah Tony after the fact. Huh?
Ooh.
Linda, just thoughts
Hey,
here for you.
Linda.
Oh goodness. So you said that Julian was your favorite character. Now,
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
all right, I gotta hit you with a weird one because the nanny was mine.
Nancy?
No, nanny. The well, was her name Nancy?
No, I know. The nanny's name was Nancy.
Oh, okay. I couldn't remember her name, but yeah, Nancy. She was fucking feisty. I loved her. Oh my God. She was like, I told you, you shouldn't do this with these children and blah 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 blah. She was like right in their faces, and I was like, yes, Nancy, get it, get it, get it. So I'm sorry. Out of the
Huh.
whole book, her little tiny part killed me. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Cheng. Tony was great, but
Tony was great.
she had that right amount of spice and sitting there to her boss's face, blah 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 blah. And I feel like that's what I do to my boss.
That is 100% what you do to your boss.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, boss man. Not really.
Yeah.
Not really, but you deserve it sometimes. You gotta be told. And if you're not honest with your people around you, then what's the point?
You know what I loved? Obviously, you don't like necessarily want your characters to get hurt, right? But like, so Cheng is a hybrid vampire, which means that she cannot go out in the sunlight.
Mm.
And I lived for one scene where she does go out into the sunlight. And I won't say anything about why or how or who or what, but it made her look grotesque. There was nothing romantic about it. There was nothing like, oh, she just got a rash. Like, no, she looked monstrous and I lived for it. It was like her like clothes were sticking to her blood and pus and like, oh,
Ugh.
I was, oh God. I was so here for it.
I will say her character all around was like a total badass because not only did she go through that and like she knew that there may be a chance that she doesn't survive it, but at one
Mhm.
point during the later half of the book or the mid half of the book, She has someone, she gets hurt like really bad,
Did you
broken.
just say mid half?
Yeah, I did. I can't say mid-flight, but apparently I can say mid-half. Oh my god. Wow. Full transparency, guys.
Sorry, continue.
Oh no, hold on. Full transparency, guys. It took me 4 or 5 different tries to say mid-flight. Don't know why. It's
Yeah.
so tough, but apparently it's not in the vocabulary today.
It's a flight, but like the middle of it.
Mid half of it. Oh Lord. So halfway through the book, Cheng gets hurt, and it's like it's pretty bad. Like she's got a broken ankle, she's got a broken arm, and she's then handcuffed. Let me tell you, this bitch was trying to pop her freaking bones back into place herself. So gross, but at the same time, she's such a badass. Like there was nothing that would keep this woman down, and I think that's why I loved her character so much.
Yeah. Yeah, I did. It was just so resilient, and like you could see like the negative, right? Like you could see the hurt, you could see the pain, you could see the regret, you could see all that in her, but she was still so resilient, and like there was nothing else for her but to keep going.
And the sad part is at one point during the book, she had said that if this could happen, then I could stop. But
Mm-hmm.
it didn't. It just didn't work out that way for her, and it just. I felt bad that there was so much that kept happening to her. How much trauma can one person take? But like then again, she's also 2,000 years old. So
You're right.
there's a lot of shit that could happen.
I something that I find in a lot of every vampire book. Um I'm gonna say it and I have to say it and it's really gross and I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry. Everyone knows that like a vampire like nicks the artery, right? Which ew, artery is a gross word. You know what's grosser? Arterial blood. And so, like, when sentences such as hot arterial blood spurted, I basically throw up mid sentence. Not in a bad way, because obviously, like, that it's supposed to make you uncomfortable. But I'm like,
Oh Lord, that's fantastic. There was a like quite a few cringy parts like that, but I don't know. I guess I handle it pretty well. If I can
it was
handle
during the part where she was all monstrous.
uh yeah, but if I can handle the whole eyeballs with the knife from the other book, I think I can handle this.
Oh, from Satan's Affair.
Yeah.
Salvador Dali made a movie with Louis Buñuel, Louis Buñuel, Louis. And in the movie, it's called something.
Yeah, usually they're called something.
I think in the movie Little Ashes with Robert Pattinson, I think he they mentioned that it's called the Andalusian Dog or something like that. But I can't remember what the actual name of it is. But there's a part in it where he takes a straight razor to a woman's eyeball.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
I'll
That's
send you the link.
well, gee, thanks. I
I
really
bought a book when
appreciate
I
it.
was in Paris. When I went to Paris, I went to a Dali museum, and I bought a book. It's called We, and I think it's a book. I believe it's been a while since I've cracked it open, but I think it's poetry. But anyway, the front cover is like stills of the movie, and I'm pretty sure that that one is there.
Okay.
This is a weird
Wow.
rabbit hole we just went down.
Yeah, just a little bit, but at the same time, like it was the whole grotesque thing. or grosser.
Yeah. Most grossest. What was your favorite quote?
I had a few. Okay. So
Okay.
the one thing about Linda's writing, I absolutely adore it.
Oh.
She writes these little blurbs in there that are just kind of like poetic, but so freaking like true. Like, okay, so one of them is because relics and artifacts tell a tale of those who lived before us, but they are not the same as a tale from the lips of one who has lived through what you have. And it's just like, okay, she's right. Looking at an artifact is never going to tell you the full story. Only what you know is going to be the full story. And it kind of goes along with the whole there's three sides to every story. There's his side, her side, and the truth. And it's just like,
Or their side.
yeah, if we are being politically correct, yes. I just was going with what I've always heard. Just saying. But
I'm sorry.
it's okay. But it okay. Here's another one. The river flows with consistency, never stopping for anything. It begins its journey in the mountains and ends when it reaches wide oceans. It never stops to look back. And it's like that, okay, yeah, that's how you should live your life. Like, see everything that's around you. But once it happens, you don't look back because what's that going to help you with? It's nothing in your past is really going to help you with your future. Learning your what you have learned will help you towards your future, but looking behind at past relationships or mistakes that you've made is never going to get you anywhere. And you got to be like the river and flow ahead. So it's just like I don't know, it's little things like that that kind of just were like, "Oh, I I don't know, I loved it." Did you have a favorite?
Favorite quote?
Yes.
I did. And I have two written down. And I feel like I will read them. And I feel like it will explain a lot as to why I am still single.
Okay.
My favorite is you'll never hate as you hated him, never love like you loved him.
Mm-hmm.
How fantastic.
I had that one
Like how
highlighted.
actually, of course, because it was fantastic.
Beautiful. Absolutely
It's
beautiful.
beautiful. um, and then the other one was a part of Sarah shrieked in warning, danger, but another part relished in it, desire.
Ugh. Like I said, she writes with like such I don't want to say it's poetry, but it is. Like it just speaks to your heart and it's just I don't know, I love it. I know I say I love it a lot, but I do. And it's driving me nuts because it's like there was so many like um you're all so young, you think you've seen the world and experienced its harshness and cruelty. None of you have gone through what I have. But at the same time, that's kind of like a basic one for her, okay? Then she throws at you. You're a frog in a well, seeing only your tiny point of view, blind to the world at large. And it's like, I love it. I love it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
But even like the simpler ones, like the one you said before, where it's like none of you have lived as long as I have.
Yeah.
Even if it's like simpler, that doesn't mean that like it was still written with such grace and such elegance, that it didn't have to be convoluted. It didn't have to have a lot of like, like imagery or symbolism or anything like that. Like the sentences themselves, like that one was perfect.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
I mean, it just for me, a lot of her little quotes like that, they just they made me stop, they made me smile, and they made me appreciate what not only what she wrote, but their meaning behind them. And
Mm-hmm.
there was so many little there was so many little quotes and moments to make you understand that yes, your perspective is just one and it's small, but even though you're small, you can make a difference. You can literally I don't know how to explain it because the way that she put it, it made you feel small, but at the same time so much more than what you might think of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
I love it. Um, One thing I did want to touch on real quick is so we talked about the references that are made in the book, and there's one that I cannot for the life of me figure out. And she was so transparent with it and she was so forthcoming with it, and I cannot figure it out. So
Okay.
she talks about how Julian was named after an archaeology professor who found bones in the Peruvian mountains, and one was a male and one was a female, and I can't figure out who it is. So the only things that I'm able to find about the Peruvian mountains were like obviously like the mass graves or like the quote unquote alien looking ones. Um so
Hmm.
like one was 29 human bodies. There was an 800-year-old mummy in Peru. It was 600 to 800 years old. But from the book, from the story, it basically said that there was a male and a female, and they were like wrapped up in each other's arms or something. Well, and it's weird because it's like, so apparently, according to Linda's book, there was a male and a female. They were found buried together. The archaeology professor was, the one that found them or whatever, and then the skeletons were stolen from him. And I feel like this would be huge news, but literally I've googled so many things and I can't find it. It's literally just the story about the aliens and then mass graves, and I there's nothing that matches that description that I've been able to find. Like this is archaeologists find bound mummy in fetal position in Peru, but it's only one.
Yeah.
And then this one has um and then this one's 8 mummified children, but that's 8, not 2. I don't know. I give up.
Huh. Well, I'll have to do some digging on that.
All right. So this book, A Mid-Flight Vampire Tale, is written by Linda Ling, and we know her from Threads, and her handle is Linda Ling Writes, LindalingWrites, which is also her handle on Instagram. And then if you go on her page, then there's a link to her link tree. And from her link tree, you can go to a mid-flight vampire's tale page. Um, and then she has her TikTok, Insta, all of those things on there. She does have other works. So she has The Adventures of Tree Fairy, which is, I believe, a mid-grade, or like a children's book. And she also has the Land of the Sun trilogy, which those books are Sundered, Forged, and Renewed. I have not looked into these yet, but I kind of am interested. It's a 3-book series. I might have to check those out. But yeah, so go and check out her pages. And A Mid-Flight Vampire's Tale is on Kindle Unlimited. So if you have access to that, then absolutely check it out.
Yes, yes, yes. Please do.
Mhm.
So next week we have kids. Last stop, ground floor. When Nick arrived in hell and he didn't realize there'd be rules, by David Wilson.
Dun dun dun.
Yes, this is going to be a fun read. It has nothing to do with romance, sci-fi, or anything like that.
Sometimes we just need, a little palate cleanser, something different.
I'll admit it, I begged for something that was not romancy, lovey-dovey, or anything to do with it. I just need a break from the romance for a moment.
I mean, I feel like this book wasn't really romancy. There were elements for sure.
I was gonna say there's definitely elements of it, but it was not, and I was kind of happy about it. Sometimes I just need blood and gore. Violence. I crave violence.
Violence. Well, I feel like we're going to get that with the next book.
Oh yeah, I'm excited. Especially because I'm looking at the dedication and it says to all law enforcement officers who worked very hard only to have those deemed guilty of committing crimes receive punishments far less than what they truly deserve, and to the victims of those crimes. I'm here for it.
Damn.
Mm-hmm. So excited.
Damn.
Yay. Well, go ahead and like, subscribe, follow, and do all the things. Listen to other episodes of our podcast. Join us on Threads.
Yes. Join us. Join us.
Join the dark side.
Join the dark side. All right. Well, thank you, everyone, and we'll see you next week.
I love how she got bubbly real quick. All right.
Bye.